Stay sane, Exile.
Hey guys, it's Lazy, and this is my next build of the league. So this time I want to talk about the Kinetic Blast of Clustering. This build is an absolute beast when it comes to mapping, as you can kind of see in the introductions. I played this build in 3.25, but it was a mage block version, and I pushed this to like multi-mirrors. But in this build, I want to make a budget versions for the build that is capable of farming Alpha temples, because it's one of the best farm right now, alongside with the Abyss Scarab setups. The Alpha temple strats that people are running require an extremely fast and efficient mapping build, which Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice is not really a good mapping build because it's kind of slow. It's just very tanky, reliable in running all kind of map modifiers, and especially farming on risk. So I want to make this build. It's already an extremely good mappers, but this time we have some very interesting mechanics in 3.26 to make it even better and even more budgets. Traditionally, this build is performed much better on higher budgets because of the way we scale our builds. We require ints and mana for scaling, so we want to have a really good one craft. But all of that is kind of solved this league because I'm using a unique one, I'm using Headhunters, I'm using Doryani, Admiral for scaling all 3 elemental damage type. And we are speccing shrines with Beguile helmets, Harmony of Purposes, Ascendancies. I'll get into all of that later, but this particular build performed insanely well at a budget. Currently, when I do say budget, I do realize that 150 to 200 Divine might sound like a lot, but it is really nothing when you want to play a build like this. This is going to be the budget that I want to share that you can start with. Obviously, it can work at even lower budget. For the purpose of the videos and for the purpose of farming Alpha Temple strats, I'm going to just talk about the budget that I'm currently in. This is not going to be a full build guide, but I will share everything you need to know about the setup, so let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is the mechanics of the Kinetic Blast of Clustering. This skill was buffed in 3.25, is really strong. It has the increase and reduction to spell damage applied to attack at 200% of the value, which means that we can scale spell damage in the build and we are able to add a lot of damage into the build. This also scales with maximum mana. and which means that you can kind of see this is why we are on a Hierophant, because we can scale intelligence and mana together with the build. Now, initially, you can kind of see here the modifiers to number of projectiles instead applied to the number of explosions. This is the main thing that is different from the normal Kinetic Blast versions. This version of the build only had 1 projectiles, and you cannot add more projectile to the initial projectile that you shoot out, and whenever it collides with something, it will create a series of explosions, and doesn't matter how many explosions you add, it's a lot harder to overlap this explosion, which means that you're not going to get a lot of single target damage. Now, there are ways to counteract this, and the first thing I want to talk about is we can use different skill gem setups to add more projectiles into the build, but another thing is that we are using a spell slinger setups. Now let me turn that on. So spell slinger setups, you have tornadoes in spell slinger, which means that wherever you clicked to attack, it's going to summon a tornado. The Kinetic Blast projectiles, when collide with the tornado, will create a series of explosions, and this will partially solve our single target damage problem because we can kind of aim where the tornado is and control where the explosion is going to land and kind of overlap on the single targets. Now, on top of this, we are adding Awakened Fork, and we are adding Sacred Swifts, and we are adding Return Proc. So return projectiles whenever you shoot can also, let me just remove these first. Return projectiles whenever you shoot will also create the explosions. So you can kind of see here, it collide with this, return here, and it will create more explosions. So that's way more explosion than before. On top of that, we are able to add Awakened Fork support, which means that whenever you shoot into the tornado, you can kind of see it goes into 3 projectiles, and you have a chance to create additional projectiles from our passive skill trees to split into another projectiles, which means that we get a tons of more explosion. On top of that, we have Sacred Swift support, so if you actually hit something, it will shoot the skills again and again create way more explosion, which have this interaction. You can kind of see here we have a crazy amount of AoEs that is full clearing the screen and is capable of clearing a map that is 2 screens away easily. Now this is especially strong if you are in a small room, so Alva Temple farmings, these skills will overlap a lot more, and with multiple overlapping, and shotgunning is still one of the best damage multiplier in PoE, and I don't even know how many I should count in my setups in the PoB, but I can assure you it is a lot, and it's more than enough to clear anything in the game if you are in the right kind of map. Right, so another thing I want to talk about is the setups with this build. So if you are running Alva Temples, there is a way for you to put Nimbus into the build and replace return projectiles. This is not really good in open layout because you can kind of see if we can't control the directions of our skills, sometimes it does not collide with the tornado. But if you are running a dense map, it shouldn't be a problem. You can kind of see in the end, we still are able to create a lot of overlapping explosion. It is not where we want it to be, but it's still good. But if you are in a small room like this, it doesn't really matter because you're colliding with walls and you're creating overlapping explosion anyway, and you get an extra damage link. So personally, I think it's up to you and the content that you are farming. If you are running an open layout, just do the taming setups in here. It's a lot cheaper than a Nimbus, and you are running return proc. You should still have enough damage to do that setups, but if you're running Alva Temples and you feel like you are lacking damage, feel free to put in a Nimbus setups and an extra increased critical damage support link. So yeah, it is up to your preference. Traditionally, this build plays on a mana stackers, and you are using Indigons if you are not in a Mage Plus setups. So Indigon and Arcane Cloaks in the setups will add a massive amount of spell damage because you spent your mana with Arcane Cloaks, and Indigons just add so much spell damage per mana spent. On top of that, Arcane Cloak also add a bunch of flat lightning damage per mana spent, And when you are running mana setups, you also get to run Mind Over Matter, which is going to make your characters a lot tankier on a budget. So overall, that setup is just insanely strong, and we choose not to run it, not because it's not viable anymore, but it's because I choose to run the gold helmet setups in a shrine stacking build because we are running the Alva temples, and because we will require the gold helmet to be able to use one Shrines of Evolution to clear all 4 temples, because otherwise you won't have enough time to do that. So losing all the spell damage from Indigons and mana stack is bad. But in this patch we get a new fun thing to play with. I have always wanted to try out the Harmony of Purpose. Now this will give you a random shrine buff effect every 10 seconds, and this was added in 3.26. If we pair this with the Gaul and the new Runecraft, it will give you 15 seconds on these little shrine buff, and so you can kind of stack them together. And on top of this, we can run the map craft or domination craft. You are just essentially getting a tons of shrines because there's passive skill trees that adds one more shrine per shrine that you click. So you would end up with a bunch of shrines buff. And this shrine buff ranging from giving you defense, offensive powers, also explosions. And overall, it's just extremely good if you are able to sustain that for the whole map. And you will end up with a bunch of shrine buff, which is extremely strong if you stack them together. This is the logics and the core behind the setup. So if you are running this particular setup, do make sure that you have domination graph and shrines on your map to click. Now, in saying that this is a shrine slackers, we cannot just talk about how you're gonna pick up like divine shrines and be immune to all damage, right? Obviously, this build is not tanky by any mean. It's designed to be a budget map blaster, especially Kinetic Blast of Clustering on this budget. So you don't expect this build to be tanky. It has like about 10k fist max hit, a little bit more if you are picking up Radiant Faith instead of running Harmony of Purpose. So the first thing, if you want to be more tanky, is put in the Radiant Faith setups over here. And you can kind of see our ES just straight up bump up to almost 9k. But I'm going to stick to Harmony of Purpose because I like having shrines, and some of the shrine buff can be pretty good. Personally, I have no problem ever running maps of a temple and dying in the temple, just because we have so much damage in the temple from all these overlapping explosions. And also, I pick up shrines before going into the temple as well. So that's not a problem for me. This build do not have any sort of block spell suppressions. I mean, probably in high budget, I will add spell suppression into the build because we do have rare gears that we can add spell suppressions. But for now, this is the core setups. Our other part of defense is going to be Leech. So we are running Ghost Reaver. We are leeching energy shields instead of life, and we are regening our energy shields with Zealot Oath. But other than that, it's just very simple setups. We are leeching, we have instant leech, and you do not run this build on no leech map. We are also chaos inoculation, so we are totally immune to chaos damage, and it's a really big part of the games if you are immune to like fully immune to chaos damage. Because in the mana setups, I think they are running Divine Shields, or they are running Corrupted Soul, and they have to deal with chaos damage, but we don't, so that's a big plus. And on top of that, we are running Ghost Dance, so we have a little bit of evasions here. Let me see, so about 7-8k evasions. And we are running the Ghost Dance setups with evasions, and we have the evasions masteries, which give evasions per intelligence. And also we have Soul Thief, which recover 2% of ES on kill, in which if we don't get one shot, then usually we recover our ES immediately. The last part of our defense is actually from the freezing. So I'll talk about all the items later. But because we are running Grace of the Goddess, you can kind of see the damage breakdown here for Kinetic Blast of Clustering. It is, we do a tons of cold damage, lightning, and a little bit of fire damage, but mainly we want to scale up a lot of cold damage. This is because we are running Winter Embrace, and yeah, we just have a tons of chance to freeze. So whenever we are running in the temples and doing all these overlapping explosion, most of the time monster is going to get freeze. Usually it's completely fine to also run the avoid elemental ailment chance for monster maps, but if you find yourself dying sometimes, then maybe it's better to run maps that don't have that modifiers. Personally, I again don't have any problems so far, and I have been farming at least 20 to 30 sets of Alpha Temple. You probably know this is coming, but in order to scale our offensive or like our damage, we are using the broken Doryani Merc setups. And we are going for negative 200 lightning resistant on a purity of element setups on ourselves, which means that your Merc gear has to be that much better, and that is also a big currency sink for your setups. But other than that, we are using some very interesting mechanic here to keep the build budget. We are using Grace of the Goddess, and this one, like you see the damage breakdown I had earlier, this one is giving us a bunch of extra physical damage as extra fire, lightning, and cold damage. It gets even better, but like we are converting 100% of our physical damage into elemental damage anyway. But this will also give you +1 to maximum sacred whiffs and just have 1 extra whiffs, which means that you can do even more overlapping explosions. So overall, it has been very good for a budget setup for Kinetic Blast of Clustering since 3.25, and it will continue to be a very strong budget setups for this patch as well. Now, the best part about this particular setup is traditionally you have to run Inevitable Judgment from the Inquisitor Ascendancies. This is so that your elemental damage can ignore enemy resistance. Now we no longer have to do that because even though we are doing cold, fire, and lightning damage, and the Doryani prototype only apply to the lightning resistance, the Admiral says that the elemental damage you deal with hits, which our skill is a hit, will be resisted by the lowest enemy elemental resistant instead. Which means that, yeah, cold and fire damage will be resisted by the negative 200% lightning res. So overall, it is just such a strong setup on a budget because Admirals and Doryani prototype and Grace of the Goddess are usually the budget part of this build. And if you don't have this and you want to do the expensive versions, you are going to need like Mirrorcraft wand or like a really good one, which is also pretty hard to craft this league due to the recombinator changes. So overall, this budget setups just turned out to be working extremely good, and everything has great synergy together, especially in 3.26. So this is my current items, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna make any changes yet, but eventually with higher investment we'll see. But for budget version of this build, Grace of the Goddess is an absolute beast of a wand. It is much stronger than 3.25, mainly because in 3.25 you could have the enchanted haunted modifiers on the wand, which is extremely strong, and you cannot do this on a unique base one. So yeah, this is not the case in 3.26 because the haunted modifier is no longer there. So Grace of the Goddess just got a big upgrade, and because the Recombinator is now nerfed, it is so much harder to get a really good roll on the one that you do want to craft. So you would probably ended up having to spend so much more divines on getting a good rare one that is not going to be that much worth it in terms of budgets and efficiencies, in which I recommend you to spend around 1 to 20 divine on the one. And the helmet is pretty straightforward. The gold doesn't really have any special role, so just get anything that is available on the market and you should be okay. Now for the amulets, I choose go with the Eyes of the Great Wolf for the attributes and maximum mana roll. Now this can get quite expensive, so alternatively you can look for a really decent rare amulets, because we're really not in the realm of like heavy int and mana stacking yet. You can see I only have 900 int. So any of the high temple mods amulets, so temple mods amulets, you can roll increased maximum mana percentage on that. Obviously it's not going to be as good as Eyes of the Great Wolf, so Yeah, if you have the currencies, do go for a cheap Eyes of the Great Wolf and use the Corrupted Catalyst to reroll to the life and mana modifiers. And then you want to anoint this with Tranquility, which is going to give you Transfiguration of Soul. Overall, just extremely strong anointment in general for the setups. For the budget versions, we are going to use a Cerulean Ring. This will give you increased maximum mana if you can get this with high int roll ES, mana maximum ES roll from the Crusader mods, and elemental resistance. That will be pretty good, so pretty straightforward. And then we have the Taming. It is a very strong budget options. We do 3 elemental ailments on enemies. This is because we do have a lot of elemental of 3 type from the Grace of the Goddess. So overall, just better to put Taming in here. You get so much increased elemental damage with hits from this ring. And make sure you also catalyst that for the elemental damage modifiers. Next up, we have the Admirals. And again, this is just the core part of the build. I explained before the interaction between Admirals and Doryanis. And so it's just extremely good on the setups. Try to get the high roll on evasions and ES and you should be good to go. For the glove, we are looking for rage on attack hits. If you can use Orb of Conflict to hit this to be 2 rage on hit, it's pretty good. Otherwise, this is like a very cheap and easy craft options. Traditionally, you want to have 60% convert on this, and to craft that glove by itself costs you from like 50 to like 100 divines, depending on if you hit on the implicit or not. Now, we only need 20% physical converted to cold damage in this build. This is because we are using the Admiral setups in our build. This means we can convert to multiple elements and still benefits from it. So we're getting 40% from the Cold Mastery over here, 40% Fist convert to lightning damage, and yes, it works for multi-elements. It goes from Fist to lightning and then to cold. So overall, just 80% convert to elements from here, and the rest is 20% Fist convert to cold. So we can freeze up more enemies. If you want to have more damage, I guess lightning is okay. Other than that, just look for maximum mana, attack speeds, and craft for area of effect, area damage. It should be relatively cheap. This glove is not in high demand at all. Yeah. And then for the boots, we are getting the intelligence, ES, evasion base, maximum mana, resistance, increased movement speed. And finally, we are using headhunters. Nothing too special here, it's just overall it's pretty good. Next up, let's talk about our jewels. And we can start with the Thread of Hope setups over here. So this is a very large passive Thread of Hope. Try to get one with lower maximum all resistance. It's pretty good. But overall, this spot is just incredibly efficient, especially for our build because we can fit so many points in here. As you can kind of see here, I have allocated 8 points in total from the same Thread of Hope. So Finger of Frost give us chance to freeze. Overall, just work very well. It is a part of our defense. And then we have the Temper Blast for extra lightning damage. Trickeries, just crit chance damage. Soul Siphon to give us maximum mana. And then a Sneaky Reservation efficiency over here to just have enough mana reservations. And then we have Thrill Killer for some extra increase maximum mana and also some mana on kill, which helps a little bit. And then we have Blast Radius for increased area of effect and damage. And finally, Arcane Focus is just amazing for ES build. Next up, we are going to have the Impossible Escape for Acrobatics. And Acrobatics, so we can allocate the multi-shot node over here, additional projectiles which turn into additional explosions. And then I'm running chance for extra fork projectiles and split shots. Overall, just getting more projectile is just way better for this build. It turns into explosions. I am not taking forking angle because I don't think it is that important. I might do a bit more testing on this, but overall, this is going to be the setup. In this build, I do have a large cluster jewel setups, and it's a very cheap one. So traditionally, you would run a very good one with increased effect, int, mana, ES on a 12 passive point. But I'm just going with a very cheap version, so like just 2 out of the 3 int mana ES with 35% increase effect. This is just going to be enough for us to get the 2 large sockets, which we are going to use for the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh, which we already talked about, so I'm going to skip that. And then we have a Watcher's Eye slot over here. We go for maximum mana as extra maximum energy shields when affected by clarity. You want to have this mod roll 10%, and you want to have as much maximal ES and maximum mana roll on this as possible. The other mod doesn't really matter. I choose to go with phasing while affected by haste. If you don't have this, you probably want phasing on your flask. It's probably not that important, so don't try to spend too much money on that. And finally, we have a slot for Unnatural Instinct. In my opinion, this is probably the least important spot, but we do have some nice AoE and maximum mana from this. And I think we have physical damage over here, so yeah, just not too important, but it's a pretty good spot. And we do have a split personality jewels, but while we're at it, let's talk about the passive skill trees, and I'll talk about it when we get there. The passive skill tree is actually quite straightforward. We do have a few spots we want to get to. So for example, the Thread of Hope spot over here is extremely good, very efficient. We get 8 skill points from this, all are very good. And then we want to path around to our split personality jewel setups. It's just a very budget options for int and maximum mana. And after that, we want to go ahead and grab all the damage node that we can. So this whole one cluster over here is extremely strong. We want to grab the intelligence, add it to accuracy rating on ones. We want to stack intelligence. And then we're grabbing the mana masteries for reservation efficiencies together with the reservation efficiency over there. This will allow us to run all of our auras and spell slinker setup. And then we have influence over here. It's probably not that strong, but I choose to grab it anyway since we are already there. And then we are taking the crit cluster over here, and we are getting the rune graph of the WAF over here to get your shrine buff to last longer. This is probably not fully optimized, but I'll provide an updated POB when I can. A little bit on the skill gems, you kind of just want to follow what I have set up in the POB. But for the Kinetic Blast of Clustering, this is probably going to be the best link. If you can run Nimbus, you can drop the return projectiles and substitute that with increased critical damage. It's worth noting that you do want the Awakened Fork versions of the Fork setups to get this amount of explosions. It's probably not that worth to run the normal Fork version, so just FYI, because Awakened Fork is by itself very, very expensive. Most of our auras, we will be running that with Enlighten level 3 support to be able to have enough mana to cast the Kinetic Blast of Clusterings. So Spell Slinger, Tornadoes, Precisions, Herald of Purities, Purity of Elements, and Discipline will be linked with the Enlighten support. And then we have the Vitality, which doesn't need to be linked with Enlighten. And then we are also running Clarities, but we keep that at level 1 because we don't need the mana regens. We only use it to trigger the Watcher's Eye mods to increase maximal ES per maximal mana. Then I have a mark on hit setups with sniper marks, mark on hit, and enhance to increase my single target damage. And finally, I am running the guard skill setups of Molten Shell with more durations and automation, so I don't have to manually cast it. And for utility skills, you can pick whatever you like: Blood Rage, Frenzy. Personally, I choose to have Frostblink for movement skills and Summon Golem for extra damage and AoE. For my Mercenary setups, I am currently using a Kineticist, and for several different reasons, but because of the Soul Ascension Glove, is one of the best option right now, because if you can use this on your Merc is going to be very tanky, because normally for us, Soul Eater is going to give us the attack and cast speed, but on our Merc it works like a monster as well, so you get the damage reductions from Soul Eaters. If you're attacking her into a maps and build up the stacks, she's going to be immortal, essentially. And because we are running a Doryani setups, you want her lightning resistance to be extremely low as well. Now, the reason I have her resistance be this low is because I am currently running purity of elements for element immunes, which means that the resistance have to be actually a lot lower because otherwise she would not be at negative 200 when we get into map. Now, this does mean that you have to spend a lot of currency on one of the good ring. Obviously, this is completely optional as well because going for like that extra minus 20 lightning res is probably going to cost you like 30 plus divine, so it's completely fine to go with a cheaper ring into this particular setup as well. And also don't forget that you can get negative 30% or elemental resistance on Immortal Flesh. Just get a minimum roll once and then roll that with the resistant catalyst, and it should help a little bit more with your setups. And for the amulets, I am using Pokotols. This is going to give me Lucky's damage with hits. I'm using Last Rite for the reduced life regenerations. And ideally, you want to have additional curse on this so the LA weakness does not override our sniper mark. I just haven't come around to upgrade it yet. Just know that this is more for single target damage only. And for AoE map clearing, it's really not a factor. And then we have Dawnbreakers for some extra tankiness. And the boots with chaos resistance, elemental resistance, some life regenerations and maximum life, nothing too special here. For the one, I am using Eclipse Solaris mainly so that nearby enemies are blind, and that's pretty much that's everything. And for the skill setups, it doesn't really matter what, we are only use her for getting that haste aura, and that is pretty much it. So there you have it. This is probably one of the best mapping build I have played this league. This is probably also not going to exist in the next league because I doubt the Doryani Mercs is going to survive. And again, Kinetic Blast of Clustering is just an extremely fun mapping skills. You do not have to run this on other temples if you want to run this on any Atlas strategies. Just make sure that you have Domination Craft on there and you are going to blast some maps. You can see these AoEs don't just clear your screen, it's clear like 1 or 2 screen away, especially you are running any kind of maps that have a bunch of walls, and you know overall it's just a map blaster, right? So make sure that when you run this, might be a pay to win skills, but if you can get the Heritage MTX, it's going to help a lot with the FPS. But with that, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.